It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. Just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Check out the Ed Opperman TikTok channel, too. We're trying to build it up quickly to draw a lot of traffic to the website. Ed Opperman TikTok has been very popular, so check it out. But our archives are free at Spreaker.com. Do a live show there every Friday night, 8 p.m. All the podcasts are released there Friday night for 3 hours, 8 p.m. There's a chat room. Get an email notification when we put up new content. I'm really excited about today's show. Not that it's a fun show or it's a happy show, but it's an important show. Our guest is Maryann Petri. She's got a podcast called SLAM the Gavel. You can find it on YouTube. All the archives are up there, but it's also on iHeart and all the podcast platforms. Couple of books. She's written 3 books. One is Dismantling Family Court Corruption and Why Taking Kids Was Not Enough. Another one is Raised by These Wolves. Okay, all these stories about the family court system. If you've been listening to this show for a long, long time, you know the Opperman Report and how much trouble we've had with family court over here. Raised by These Wolves, how federal court is failing families. Maryann Petri, are you there?
I'm here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Tell us about yourself. Before we get into anything about family court, forget it. For just the audience wants to meet Maryann Petri. Tell us, who is Maryann Petri?
Well, thank you for having me on. I was a nurse for 23 years. I have been doing this podcast since 2020. In that time, I wrote the book, Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough. And then I followed that up with Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. And then I recently released the Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. And it's like 27 stories of parents that have gone through family and or federal court. And these court systems just are not having any justice for these parents. Mm-hmm. There's no way. It's they say that a pro se would only win maybe 1% out of 99. You just don't win in federal court.
You know, it's amazing. If you ask people what's the most important thing in your life, they'll say my family, right? But what's the most dysfunctional system in the world is family court. Let's start with this.
Yeah.
Tell us what's on your podcast, Slam the Gavel.
I have a variety of guests. I have parents telling their stories. I have had, trauma coaches, trauma and healing coaches like Lori Smith. She's amazing. She has a podcast called Clouded Compass. I've had on judges, attorneys. I've had Dr. William Burnett, Dr. Jennifer Jill Harmon on. I recently had Philip Simon on. He is a veteran where in San Diego, California, a judge just kicked him out of his home that he owns, and she doesn't care. So I try to, give these parents some type of justice that they're definitely not going to get in a courtroom if they tell their story.
Yeah, you were telling me off the air right before we started about this veteran, and I know it has you really upset. It's on your heart. So why don't you tell us that story right now?
Well, he's been in the San Diego courts for 3 years, and he, they were trying to figure out, it shouldn't even be in family court. It should be in civil court. The judge is out of her jurisdiction. And what has happened is, he just wants to get a divorce. Mm. And what they do in California is they drag out these divorces, right? And so I'm going back to this podcast. So he has been disabled, suffering with PTSD 100%. He did not retire out of the military. He was disabled. And the judge was continuing the false narrative that he had retired. Mm. And he had a fight with her about that. And then you know, it's just so bad because there was a kick-out order issued on July 29, 2021 on his ex-wife and her sister, who already had temporary DVROs against them. But in beginning of August, San Diego County Superior Family Law Division allowed the two women to move back into Philip's home just 5 days after kicking them out, despite his attorney's objections. And, you know, it has been bias, prejudice against this veteran from the very beginning.
What did you say that the veteran's name was?
Philip Simon.
Okay, so now, and you're saying they're in family court, they're in divorce court. Do you have children involved, or it's just adults?
Well, there's two kids, and the thing is, the judge is Sharon L. Kilmakiran, and they call her the closer. So if your case is running lengthy, like for a long time, even if she's out of her jurisdiction, she just flat out doesn't care, and she will just put out orders that she just does not care. And with his case, she doesn't care either way by the VA disability that is not community property. You know, she finally admitted that. He had to fight with her with that as well. Her fraud actions have forced him into bankruptcy, and she's violated her code of judicial ethics and failed to observe his due rights process. And this is going on. We are allowing, the taxpayer is allowing these judges to torture families.
Now, this veteran, is he a pro se defendant, or is he have representation?
He's a pro se now.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, he's a pro se now.
Okay. All right. So, and what was the justification for the judge's order that he would have to vacate? Or is it a sale?
It's a fail. The thing is, okay, so let me see. I'm going back to my notes. I totally apologize.
No, fine.
But he was also on with another litigant, Kara Lee Barrar, and they discussed their cases. She came on with him, and this was season 5, episode 18, and they both had the same judge. Everyone calls this judge, as I said, the closer. And Carrie Lee discussed what parents go through as they have to pay, $500 per hour for a court reporter and $2,000 to $3,000 for transcripts. And God knows if you can afford an attorney, that's $700 an hour, and you still don't receive justice.
And where is this? Is it in L.A. County?
This is San Diego County.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm glad I had Carol Lee on because she brought up a peremptory challenge and how to file a peremptory challenge. And that's the first thing you should do when you go into these courts to get rid of the judge so they can't be on your case. And had Philip done that, maybe he probably didn't know to do that. In fact, I think we have peremptory challenges here in Pennsylvania as well. And had I known that, my life would have turned out differently, possibly.
Well, how did you get mixed up in all this? You had your own issues in family court?
I didn't bring it. I was co-parenting with my ex-husband for approximately 10 years. And then I had this great idea to introduce him to this distant acquaintance that I was in a bridal party with a long time ago. And so I thought, she's finishing up her divorce, and I just, they just need to date and get experience in dating. Well, I didn't know that they were going to talk on the phone for 4 hours. She then moved in 2 weeks, and in 7 months they were married. And then that's when a lot of the problems began. She inserted herself in the co-parent relationship and the relationships I had with my children.
So you and your ex were living together.
Oh no, we were co-parenting. I had my house, he had his house. We had been divorced since '04, the end of '04, and he remarried in '07, and that's when problems started, happening. And then, he tried a court action for a emergency petition to just remove one of my children from me. As I recall, that he was calling both of us mentally ill. And luckily, the judge at that time just, she denied it. And I thought, oh, well, that's over. It was 2013, I believe. But things were just starting to heat up. This wife of his works in the courthouse, which I don't know if I knew when I hooked them up on a blind date. No good deed goes unpunished, right? So
wait, let me ask you a quick question. Did you set them up on blind dates or dates prior to this one, or this is the one and only, and the one that went bad?
Yeah, I think this was the only one date because I told him I tried to hook him up with other nurses, but I couldn't. Everybody else is in a relationship, and this one, I thought could work as I talked it over with a so-called close friend. And the friend also didn't tell me other things about this individual that I should have known, because had I known, I definitely would not have set them up on a date.
And then ultimately what happens then? He files this petition for custody of one child, but then what happens?
Then what happened, just to speed things up, is, the oldest wanted to move out. The oldest was 16 going on 17, so she just decided to pack up. Then I had CPS at my door the same day on a false allegation of emotional child abuse. Mm-hmm. The rogue caseworker had an agenda. She had a one-sided interview going on with all misinformation. The misinformation that in itself was egregious. On top of this emotional abuse indication, where I asked her, I said, when was the last time you founded an emotional abuse case? She said it was 30 years ago. And I said, well, when was your last emotional abuse case filed? And she said, you're my first one. Wow.
Yeah, I have had some experience with that myself, and we couldn't even get them to show up. And we had everyone was calling up, making this report. It was so obvious. And we couldn't even get them to show up and take a report on emotional abuse.
They're horrible.
That was in Nevada. That was in Nevada.
They need to be abolished. They really serve no earthly purpose. Really.
Well, how did your situation there work itself out? What were the results?
Well, the result was on March 2nd of 2015, the ex called another emergency petition. Now, bear in mind, I was indicated for emotional child abuse in November of 2014. So here we are, March of 2015, and the judge on CPS's advisement to take the kids away. And when that happened, there was such jubilation in the courtroom because the ex and his wife brought their whole entourage, her sisters, her mother, his parents, jumping up and down, clapping. And the judge didn't mind because what we all knew was the judge and the opposing attorney worked together in the DA's department for years.
Well, not only that, too, but I don't know about California, but in Nevada, the judges are elected, so they see, 20 voters out there. Yeah, and 20 votes for a judge is quite a bit. It does influence them,
Well, ours are elected.
Yeah.
They're all chipping in for each other's judge campaign. The lawyers, they're all doing it.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I guess there are sites you can go on to see who donated how much to who. This has got to just stop. Family court needs to be abolished, as well as CPS.
Well, then let me ask a question. Then what would you? Because I agree with it. It's a big mess, But then, and there's so many situations you run into, especially as a working private investigator, that you're witnessing an abusive situation, and who do you call? There's really no one else to call but CPS or the police, and even though they're going to mess everything up when they get there. What would you recommend as an alternative system?
Well, if they are, okay, let's say CPS is gone and there is an abusive situation, you'd call the police and they would go investigate and see a kid that's bruised and beaten, we'll say, and they would take the child to the emergency room and then, get him feeling better or her feeling better. And then within the police department, there would be very experienced individuals that know how to deal with, we'll say, child abuse, child psychological abuse, and they would have, a placement area, not with random foster parents. And this would be people that would be highly vetted, that the child could stay with, or, the child could go to, we'll say, kinship care is probably what should happen first. Sorry. They should go to the, another relative.
Yeah, family member. Yeah, but the thing is, I've seen a lot of this stuff over the years. I'm 61 years old. I'm doing this kind of work for 40 years. And usually when you have a house with neglect and abuse because of drug abuse and criminal activity and, they got 8 dogs and all kind of, you see this stuff. It's horrendous. And usually their relatives are right along the same kind of pattern as they are. The relatives are right up there with them. And if the relatives were any better off, they'd have stepped in by now. It's my experience. And you know what I mean? And the other situation, too, is, let's bring the cops in. Oh, my God. Look at all the situations we have. Cops showing up with their guns and they're shooting dogs and, the people with mental illness getting shot by the cops. Is that the solution, too, man? I can only see that being a worse solution. I'm not saying that I have a solution, but I can't.
But the issue with the CPS, the longer they hang around, they're just going to take kids also out of fit, healthy families based on the purpose to adopt them out so they can get incentives and bonuses. I just had Laura Thomason on my podcast Sunday, and she explained all of this. How much money they get for adopting out, which is, I think like over $12,000 if CPS adopts, or they coordinate an adoption from foster care and adopt out. There's a big, payday. So there is a price on every child's head. So let's get rid of CPS. So there's not a price on a child's head that would also encourage child trafficking. And that's another thing she and I talked about. So that, it has to go. They've got to come up with another plan where the police have to do their job and remove a child that's getting beaten up. And if they can't go to a relative, then they're going to have people in place that have been highly vetted, like, child abuse clearances done and fingerprinted and state police background checks done, that these people have it in their hearts to want to care for another human being. It should not be money-based. It shouldn't be, okay, we're going to pay you $700 a month for this child to stay with you. Because what I've also seen with foster care is they will put a child in foster care for 3 years, that kid will be there, but then they're going to take that child out and put him in another foster home. That's horrible. Mm-hmm. I don't know why that happens, but I think if we take away this incentive and say, okay, we're going to, if you want to be a foster parent, we're only going to pay you $200 a month for one child, and you're only allowed to have 2 at a time. And again, these kids have got to be totally checked out for child and sexual abuse, because when that happens, once they learn something, they may do that also, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. And again, these group homes and stuff are a nightmare for these kids. And the people get hired to work at them and supervise them, and these foster homes. Even the ones like out in the Midwest where they have these ranches, they put these kids on these ranches. They got 12 kids, and they're getting what you said, $700 a month for each one, and they're putting them out to work in the fields like slave labor. The setup we have right now is a nightmare, and you're right. We have to remove a profit motive from this system.
Yes.
While at the same time funding it in some way,
or do people want to do it out of love? Do they want to do it, I'll take a child into my home, I can do it, I don't have kids of my own. I mean, they would have to go through some training as well as being vetted, and there's got to be a better way to do this than put them with people that are, I hate to say, low budget and could care less. They just want to, they'll refer to that child as their Denali car payment.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but also too, I've seen that training, so-called training for foster parents and stuff like that, and it's a joke. It's all just, and who gets those contracts to give that training? A friend of the judge, friends with politicians and stuff. That's all graft. That's all. Kickbacks and stuff. It's just like I'm sure you're familiar with family court, like your friend there with the veteran who lost his home. They had a guy come in, do an appraisal and an evaluation on a home, and that guy got paid a lot of money, and it's a friend of the judge. It's a friend of these lawyers. Custody evaluators, the same thing. These guys are making $50,000 to evaluate parents for custody, and these are some of the most corrupt guys in town.
Oh, yes. And I always tell people, I said, okay, if you're getting a divorce, you don't have to run into a courtroom. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you'll have an ex that you can sit down and talk monies with, and how you're going to shift the kids back and forth. I've seen that happen. I've had a couple on my podcast that they co-parented beautifully with their exes. Okay. It can happen. But if you're stuck with someone who is a personality disorder, and which is probably another podcast on itself, how we should train these young people to identify a personality disorder. But that's why we have so many divorces, because of all these personality disorders running around. And then the target parent gets hauled in to family court, whether they like it or not, which was my case.
Well, yeah, and also even you can walk in to some of these court-ordered, because I know in Nevada they have a thing where before you can even file for a divorce, you have to go in for this parental counseling kind of thing, and family mediation center. And in my personal situation, it was the family mediator that made a mess out of everything, because we were walking in there. She was going to give me full legal custody. And this guy tells her, oh, no, you get half the money. There's money involved in that you can make. And from that,
there it is.
Yeah, and from that day on, because I raised this kid by myself. She knew the whole story, She had no expectations, but yeah, it's just a nightmare when you get involved with these people. Which brings up another question I have for you, because you've been doing this a long time now. How long have you been advising people through the family court system?
Oh, wow. Since the first book came out, which was 2020, and then when the podcast happened, then I had everyone contacting me. And I'll talk to people on the phone. Like, I call that a crisis call. When I was a psychiatric nurse, people would call to the floor and we would have a crisis call type of situation. So I've been advising people. I'm not a lawyer, but I can only tell you what I would do next or not do next. You just have to try to steer people out of these even thinking of going into these courtrooms, and talk to people. In fact, I had a guy cleaning the windows or whatever he was doing in our house, and I said, hey, have you ever been to family court? And he was smart. He said, no. He said, well, he and his ex-wife went in there once, and they both walked out, and they both said, we can handle this on our own.
Yeah.
And, some people catch on, but the people that are left with a personality disorder that wants to get even with you because you want to leave, whether it's the mother or the father, this is not a gender war. This is happening to both sexes, mothers and fathers, but you've got these personality disorders that want to get even, and what they'll do is they will use the silver bullet of he or she's crazy, or a sexual abuse allegation. It could even be a false domestic violence allegation. They'll do anything to get the kid. They really don't want the kid. They just want it. They know that you want the kid because you're the better fit parent, and the better fit parent is the one who's going to fight like hell for their child. So they will exhaust all financial resources, which is what happened to me. I was racking up charge cards, loans. It was horrible. Yeah. And then I got to the point where I had to represent myself, and I didn't do too bad. It was just making it through the channels. But however, I had lost my job as a registered nurse based on these false allegations of emotional child abuse that I was exonerated from.
Yeah, all these attorneys too will encourage that revenge, and they'll even they even go in the back with the judge, and they have conferences, both attorneys and the judge. How much are these two worth? How long can we drag this out for to take everything they got? And that's how bad it is in Nevada, and this is widely known. Now,
right.
Like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing the show a long time, the radio show a long time, 10 years. I've been working in criminal defense for a long time, but also in litigation preparation, stuff like that. I had invented some stuff to track people's behaviors online, on dating sites and social network sites and stuff like that years ago. And that kind of evidence, those reports were used in custody evaluations. Mm-hmm. So I've seen a lot of this. And I've had a lot of clients come to me, especially they have run out of all my money, just like you said. It's just so common. All I wanted to do was move out, and now I'm broke, and I got nothing. And I'm getting fired from my job, like you. I'm losing my job on top. Okay? And it's just over and over and over you hear this. But what about these litigants that become consumed with the process? They become consumed with the litigation. They're pro se by now. They want to be a bigger expert than the attorneys. They want to be a bigger expert than the judge. They want to spend more time proving their right in court, and they lose sight of their goal to parent their children and get away from this process. Do you see that?
Yes and no. Once a parent has totally exhausted everything, and some parents just walk away once they've lost everything. They can or can't do pro se because it takes a lot of mental strength you're going to get emotionally abused in family court and in the superior court. It just is going to happen. You have to be used to having people laugh at you. And it just comes with the territory. But a lot of parents are going pro se because everything, your nest egg, everything's going to be gone. You won't have anything financially to offer your kids if they should need help in the future. And if they're going to fight, they generally don't have their kids, so they just keep fighting for their kids, which is what I did until they aged out. But they were very close to turning 18. When all this happened for me, they were like 13, 14 going on 15, because they were like 14 months apart. But in the meantime, when I couldn't work, that's when the ex filed for child support, because he had those kids. So I was forced to fight, not only to get them somehow back, which was not going to happen. He didn't really have anything to financially gain by collecting child support when I can't pay it, because I was suspended from my nursing job until I was exonerated. And when I was exonerated from the first allegation, 4 days later, I was slapped with a second false allegation, which was a retaliation motive because I had contacted the governor's office on the first indication of emotional child abuse. And they rattled the cage of CPS and shook it up a bit. So to get even with me, they filed this indication. What my lawyer and I found out when I had the lawyer at the time, it's like, well, okay, you're indicated. Now you're indicated again 4 days later, but gee, this indication was filed way back in April. It's like, why was it filed back then and not now, like the caseworker was telling me it's filed now? Mm-hmm. So it was a retaliation issue. And this happens all the time, I'm telling you. So what had happened was, the long and short of it was, the arrears were building up. They were constantly having support contempt conferences. That turned into support contempt hearings, which led to the judge threatening jail all the time. And then she did try, well, she put me in jail. And she wanted me in there for 2 months. I only lasted 5 days. I had to call my 79-year-old father, who did pay, they call it a purge amount of $2,000. Because I was not doing well. I was sick. I was complaining of chest pain. I was asking to go to the ER. They were saying, no, we don't do that here. So in the meantime, once I got out of there, I filed back to the Superior Court that this child support has got to be fixed. Because, I listed everything. I did all my reproduced record and all that was a nightmare, that on top of itself. So on October 16th of 2017, I did have a major heart attack where I did have 3 stents to the LAD, which kind of scared the judge, but I had court the following week. I was allowed to drive, and she wagged her finger at me, and she says, you go get this physician verification form signed by your family doctor, and this is the only thing keeping you out of jail today. And I thought to myself, gee, I just gave you the cardiologist's notes of the whole heart cath procedure and what was done. And a cardiologist is God compared to a family doctor. And she didn't care. She wanted to cause more stress in my life by making me run to the family doctor, have him sign this document, get it back to her within 7 days. And, she just didn't care. But ultimately, my Christmas present came on the 27th of December of 2017 that I did win in Superior Court, and I had to go back and correct it. So then I had to hire an attorney. I told my husband, we have to, I don't have a choice. We've got to hire an attorney because with my health, I just didn't think I could physically do it because I was still having chest pain. And that turned into another heart cath in January, but I found a Supreme Court attorney, and she was amazing. I still praise her. I can't tell her name over the air because then everyone will be calling her. But she totally put the judge in her place, and she told the judge, Your Honor, you have to abide by what the Superior Court ruled. And what the judge graciously did was she took the arrears that she had inflated months and months earlier. She added $3,000 to the arrears. That's illegal, by the way. Then she took that off, leaving me with $11,000 still in the arrears, and she lowered the child support from $900 down to $106, which my current husband is paying for some other man's children.
But so now, where are you today? Are your children with you now?
Well, the oldest one will not speak to me because he bought her off. He bought her everything she wanted. She now hates me. The other 2 do talk to me, and the relationship is really perfect with the youngest one because he really wasn't affected by this. They kind of left him alone when they were sequestered and talking to the kids, but they could really pick on the middle one because he was more malleable, more vulnerable type of personality. And also, when this was over with, I asked, I called the head of human services and I said, do I have a lawsuit? Because everything was violated here. So he had me send documents to him. I did. He said, yes, you can sue. So I started a federal court case as a pro se, and my middle son did not like that. Again, they totally brainwash these kids. This is what these exes do that are personality disorders. They brainwash these kids to hate the other parent by using and installing fear and shared persecutory delusions. So that was going on, and I just had to wait that out. It again went to the appeals court. In the meantime, the attorney who was representing CPS, the corporation, and the two caseworkers, when I was dropping off exhibits, he hauled me into a boardroom and he said, look, I can tell you've been to court, but I can tell you what, I know both those judges in the federal courthouse, and I'm going to get this case dismissed. And that's pretty much how it's going to go. And I said, okay, here's the rest of your exhibits. Have a nice day. So I went and put that into an affidavit, and I submitted it to all parties. So then everybody knew about that. But again, it went to the appeals court and where it was dismissed. And this is what's always going to happen. People think they can file a federal court case and they're going to be heard. They're finally going to get justice. And the point two raised by these wolves, how family and federal courts are failing our children, is the federal courts are not doing their job at all.
Before we started the interview, you said you wanted to tell us about Title 40?
This is what's going on with these incentives. This is why we have these problems with CPS, foster care, and child support. Okay, so Title 40 is for child support enforcement. Okay, so that's when a person pays child support and the state skims off, we'll say $1.50 or $3. Every state's different. This is a $1 billion a year business, like a $4 billion a year business, or even more. And this also involves, Title 4B, which is CPS, and how they get their monies, as I said, through bonuses and adopting kids out. Then there's Title 4E, that's foster care, and that's how they get their monies. And a lot of people are saying, well, they're just trafficking children anyway. So everyone's getting paid off the backs of a non-custodial parent who's even not being allowed to see their child, either through custodial interference, because they could be ordered to see their kid every other weekend. But if you have a personality disorder, they can keep the kid from you. But tides are turning there. House Bill 969 was passed in Texas. Claudia Ovias got that passed and pushed through, and that's a felony if a parent withholds a child and there's a judge's order that parent can see the kid. It's a felony. Also, piggybacked onto that bill with time back. So, if a parent wasn't allowed to see their kid for a number of years and they were withheld by custodial interference, they get some type of time back. And I need to know more about that bill so I can talk more intelligently about it, but it's holding parents accountable, and that's what needs to happen as well.
And also, too, you wanted to tell the audience about parental alienation?
Right. Well, I had mentioned how my ex was teaching my kids to hate me, and installing a shared persecutory delusion, like, oh, I'm so scared. Your mother, a parent will say, your mother or father, they're just they're just crazy. They act like this, and they scare the kid. They purposely scare the kid into thinking about something that never happened. Like they'll say, well, don't you remember this happened last year? And they did this. And the kid, it's Stockholm Syndrome. They start believing the shared persecutory delusion. My friend Lisa Goodpastor wrote the book Alienated When Parents Won't Parent. And that is a good book to read for any parent that is suffering through that, or an alienated child, if they need to know if there's something wrong. Why haven't I seen my father in 8 years? Why haven't I seen my mother in 5 years? I believe all this stuff, but I'm questioning it now. Go to that book. And that, parental alienation, in some countries, a parent can be jailed for that. I think it's Ireland, and I think it's someplace in South America.
But what would we do under our current system when the people that are evaluating parental alienation are these same guys that are getting these contracts and these payoffs, and both attorneys are using the same guys? They both know if I get the judge to refer our case to this parental therapist, a custody evaluator, that we're all going to get a kickback.
Right.
And they talk about it, they joke about it. It's not.
Oh, right. Well, this is why we need to get rid of family court.
Yeah.
Get rid of all of these entangled, incestuous relationships with these lawyers and judges. And everyone says, well, judges need to be trained. No, they don't. They know what parental alienation is. They know what child psychological abuse is. They're just taking payoff.
Yeah, because I'll tell you something. If you ever sit there in court and you're watching all these cases all day long, and you see these people in there that are poor, their case gets ended really quick. Like, it doesn't get dragged on for years.
Right.
If there's no property, it's a whole nother world. How they treat these poor families, how they treat the people that have any kind of assets. They just bleed you dry.
Right. Right. And the poor people, they do take advantage of, but they also go after the middle class. And, the rich people also do suffer. No one's getting away with it, but they are taking advantage of the, poor people more, I would have to say, as well as the African-American population as well. They're easy targets. They just are, because they can get away with it.
Let me ask you something, Maryann Petri. Have you ever looked at this? I've had a guest on the show named Janet Phelan, and she's written a book, and she teaches a class on. You should have her guest on your show, on your podcast, Slam the Gavel. Okay. She teaches a class on researching your judge, is what she calls it, right? But what they really do is they research the financial condition of the judge and how these payoffs work. And this is widely known. I've known about this for the past 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
The second mortgages. The judge will take out a second mortgage, and suddenly it's paid off by some third party. No paper trail. They take out another second mortgage. These judges are taking out second mortgages every year, and they're getting paid off over and over, all over the place. And that Murdoch case, that case down there in it was on the big TV series. The guy killed his wife, and those judges down there and that DA down there, they've got these things galore. These second mortgages during this case down there. So keep an eye up on that. But have you run into that kind of thing too, with these blatant payoffs and bribery that goes on?
Most definitely. I have covered the case with Lee Grenade. She's been on my podcast.
Yeah, I've had her on my show. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've always told parents, or, if you get hauled into family court or whatever, go on LinkedIn, look at the judge that you are assigned to, and then start following the, I hate to say, trail of breadcrumbs, and see who their friends are, what their recent posts are. You may be able to find connections with your own attorney, because sometimes it's so triangulated with the judge, the opposing attorney, and your own attorney. They're all in it together.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, even it's probably cheaper to go ahead and get a private investigator to do all this work for you and then do a peremptory challenge if that's allowed in your state. You'd have to check your state if that can happen. And as soon as you get that judge, nope, peremptory challenge. Just get rid of them. It's kind of like it's like I want to say kind of like a forced recusal.
Right.
But
what you're saying is you have one free shot to change your judge before the trial starts. If you don't like the judge. Right. And talking about hiring a PI, it doesn't even have to be a PI, but you need to, when you're going to hire a lawyer, the first thing people say to me, I got a case in this situation over here. First thing is, who's the lawyer for that judge? And you can find out who's that judge's pet, their little pet lawyer who gets whatever he wants. And they all have one. They all have at least one, and that's what you want to do. You want to go out and hire someone to tell you who that guy is, not who's the best lawyer in town, who's the lawyer for that judge. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Unfortunately.
I've had a lawyer tell me, "Oh yeah, I'm friends with that judge."
Well, they all say that.
Yeah. Well, he told me that that he's been told he presents well, and I thought, "Oh God, thank God, I have an in. I mean, maybe there's some hope." Oh no. He would send in his underling to go argue, and a lot was done so wrong in my case, and I just thank the Superior Court for ruling in my favor, because if that was not the case, I would be going in and out of jail every 3 months.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you do hire the right law firm and they have an in with that judge, doesn't matter who they send in, because they're going to get everything their way anyway. And it's very, very blatant too. It's very obvious, and they joke about it behind the scenes. Everybody knows. It's just the corruption. Like I said, family court. If you ask anybody what's the most important thing in your life, they'll say my family. But the worst situation we've created is this system of family court for the most important things of our life. The custody of our children, the separation of our assets. They can force you where to live, what kind of employment to have. It's just a nightmare that we've created ourselves. That is, like you said, it's this billion-dollar industry that's out of control. Right, and
it's not a broken system. This system is a well-oiled machine to churn and grind out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's why family and court do not belong in the same text together. It should all be taken down to civil court. Okay, so when you were asking about, these therapists and the parental alienation, okay, so if someone calls out parental alienation, okay, you're going to have to show a pattern. You're going to have to show proof of parental alienation. You just don't call out. This is the problem. They walk into these courtrooms and they'll call out, he or she's crazy, he or she's alienating my kids from me, and there's no investigation. They're not saying, okay, where's your proof? Prove it. Prove it. No one's proving it. And good luck with a therapist that someone picks that is friends with the ex's wife. I don't know what to say.
No, exactly. And it's not even friends, but the therapists, they're all getting kickbacks too as well to testify.
Right.
And they all know each other. They all know each other. And if all these allegations say, well, okay, the spouse is alienating the children, then you go back. Well, now you have to prove you're not, and then just come up with another allegation the next month. The next time you show up in court, and you're in there forever.
Well, see, the thing is that the judge has to be smart enough to know that's a bunch of BS, because if you're calling out an allegation, you have to show that this is true. I'm tired of you're guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah, but then again, the judge has to cover their own butt, because if something happens, outside the courtroom, if there's a tragedy, some kind of nightmare, and if people only knew how many suicides there are at family court, they don't publicize it, they don't talk about it. They might say there's a shooting every now and then, but there's all kinds of suicide attempts at family court all the time. We've only got about 2 minutes left. What would you like to leave us with?
Well, I would like to leave you with. With my first book, I have signed on with director Adam Worth, and we're working on a trailer. I have done the screenplay, so we're just waiting to get this into motion. And it's going to be about not just my story, but everybody else's story kind of intertwined. So everyone gets the idea that this affects everybody, not just one woman. This affects everybody. And with Raised by These Wolves, the gist of it is, don't go in there if you don't have to. And when you think you can try to win in federal court, don't bother, because they're all in collusion. They all know each other. And they don't look at evidence. And that's the biggest part of family court and federal courts. They do not look at evidence. Even if you've got it all ready to go, these judges don't care because of the collusion.
We've been talking to Maryann Petri. You can find her on Twitter at Petri Maryann. That's Petri, Maryann with 2 N's. The podcast is called Slam the Gavel. You can find it on YouTube, but it's also on all the podcast platforms. Several books out. One is Raised by These Wolves, How Federal Court is Failing Families. Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking Kids Was Not Enough. Maryann, thank you so much, okay?
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Good night.
Good night.